My dad hates my house, and apparently expects me to take in my brother's children at some point. Posted by you/Slender Selkie. I don't know if this is the right sub for this. But in this moment, as the only blood-related woman on my father's side of the family, it feels gendered. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong. A few days ago, my dad came over to my house for the first time in quite a while. I've had a lot of renovations done since he last saw the place when we first moved in. I have a nervous system condition which, while I'm very fortunate to be able to manage it in such a way that it usually doesn't impact my life most days out of any given month, can render certain simple tasks very difficult for me when I'm having a flare. It's also important, as part of managing my condition and maintaining my high level of function, to limit certain activities which can bring about a crash or a flare. My husband is also disabled. He has hypermobile Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, so together we made a list of things we'd love to have as accommodations in the home we share, and we either DIY'd those things or found contractors to do them for us. I'm really happy with the results. I find that these accommodating renovations make my life a lot easier. I have fewer crashes and overall more energy. My husband is elated with how much more functional he can be after we made these changes. My father isn't a fan. He thinks it all makes the house too weird. He's worried about the resale value, not that we're planning to sell anytime soon. He had a lot of comments when he came over. In fact, it was almost all he talked about. I kept trying to gently tell him that this is just what works for us and then divert the subject, but he was getting a bit worked up, which isn't really like him in those types of situations. The plan for his visit was he'd come over, meet my foster dog that he might adopt, and take the dogs for a walk and get lunch. When I left him alone for a minute to go use the bathroom after we'd walked the dogs, I came back out and found that he'd attempted to pull one of our accommodating mechanisms out of the kitchen wall. He hadn't caused any functional damage, but he did cause aesthetic damage in that it will now need to be repainted over. I was shocked and kind of hysterical in my reaction, and I raised my voice at him when I saw what he was doing. I think I yelled, "What the F are you doing, Dad? What's your problem?" And he responded, "I just wanted to see if it was removable. Sorry. It's just too weird. It's too weird, it's just not going to work when Billy and Bobby move in with you." Billy and Bobby are my nephews. My brother's kids. I have never invited them to stay with me, let alone move in, for any amount of time, and I've never been asked to do so. Even in the event that my brother and sister-in-law passed away in some tragic manner, to my knowledge I should be very far down a very long list of people who could be asked to take those kids in before I would be asked. So, I was pretty shocked my dad would say something like that out of the blue, and with so much frustrated emotion, about Billy and Bobby moving in because there's no reason, to my knowledge, for anyone to think that would possibly be happening. I asked him to clarify repeatedly, but he just waved it off and told me to forget he said anything and he didn't want to talk about it. I pressed him and all he said was, "Well, honey, it's a massive house. You have room for 2 boys. When I asked him why he would even bring it up though, and clarified that not only did I have absolutely no desire to host my nephews for a visit let alone to move them in, he clammed up again and just said forget I ever said anything. He apologized for damaging my home, immediately transferred a larger sum than necessary to me via Zelle to fix the scratch he'd made, and then took me out to lunch as we planned prior. The rest of the day with him was pretty normal, and I guess I was just a little shocked or something because I didn't bring it up again. But now that it's been a few days I can't get it out of my head and I'm so annoyed. First of all, my dad hasn't ever been and would never be that aggressive about any decoration or renovation in my brother's homes. He just wouldn't. And I can't help but feel that he is less respectful of my home because I'm a woman, which sucks. But more upsetting and confusing. What the F was he talking about in terms of my nephews? Like, is my family conspiring in some way to move those kids in with me? It wouldn't be the first time that my family assumed I'd take care of those kids without asking me first, but in the past it was just babysitting, and I have directly told everyone that even that is unacceptable, so I would be really shocked if my brother or sister-in-law thought that was acceptable. I guess I'm just spinning out and don't really know what to do about it. I'm stuck between asking my father about it again first or just reaching out to my brother directly. Top/relevant comments. Commenter. Is there something wrong with your brother that he can't raise his own kids? Ops response. No, nothing wrong. To my knowledge, my brother isn't looking to move his kids out of his own home either. They are sometimes difficult kids, a little delayed and a lot entitled/enabled. In the past, they've leaned heavily on family for childcare since my brother has a demanding job, and my sister-in-law has a hard time being alone with her kids. When I lived with my dad, I was a big part of that equation and ended up being more responsible for those kids than I'd have agreed to, because I wasn't in control of telling them if they could bring the kids over, as it was my father's house. But even when I still lived with my dad, I was able to establish some boundaries and assert that I wouldn't agree to care for them on demand, and that was generally respected after I put my foot down a few times. Commenter 2. I'd definitely try to get more info from your dad, but failing that, it wouldn't be bad to talk to your brother? It seems like a really out-of-pocket thing to say unless he has some serious information you don't. Ops response. It's incredibly out of pocket. Not only do I not want those kids to live with me, but I also would assume that my brother wouldn't want his kids to live with me. There are a million reasons why, but chiefly it wouldn't be a good idea safety-wise for those kids. I've been dealing with a stalker for years who has already threatened me that she would harm my nephews, at which point I distanced myself from Billy and Bobby, stopped picking them up from school, etc., and the threats directed at them stopped. Currently, I'm working on taking legal action, but nothing is set in stone, and even the idea of those kids, who are difficult but who I also love very much, being in my home makes me worried that they would be directly targeted or that there would be some escalation. I actually can't imagine that my family would think it's a good idea to move those kids in with me. I can't imagine circumstances where that would seem appropriate. Up to another commenter. It's okay. She's someone I used to be friends with, and honestly, it's my bad because I hung in there even when I realized she was becoming mentally unstable. She became fixated on my husband when he and I began dating, and I became the enemy in her eyes. Commenter 2. Yeah, particularly given that information, but even without it, it's hard to imagine your brother or sister-in-law would want or expect you to take in their kids short of some kind of serious health or relationship emergency. And even then, that wouldn't be something for your dad to be concerned about, unless he's a particularly worrying person. Ops response. Even if there's an emergency, I simply cannot be the first person on their list to take those kids in. I'm the only younger female blood relative, I guess, but there are so many other relatives and family friends who need to come before me on that list. My brother and sister-in-law have a massive village, so I'm talking dozens. It's baffling to me that it would come down to me to take those kids in under any circumstances. Up to another commenter. My dad has normalized triangulation a bit too much in this family for my comfort. Commenter 3. Triangulation? Ops response. Dad will say, your brother is really upset that you said you can't go to his birthday dinner. He even said he'll move it up an hour just so you can come. And I know that you'd still need to move your schedule around even if it's an hour earlier, but he really wants to make it easier for you because he really wants you there. When my brother said neither of those things, then he'll tell my brother, your sister is heartbroken that she can't make it to your party, and she doesn't want to say anything, but she's hurt that you aren't having it an hour earlier so she can make it. When I said neither of those things. And he does all this because he wants the whole family at my brother's party, and doesn't like the idea of the whole family not being present. So my brother moves his party up an hour because he thinks that's what I said I wanted. I move my schedule around to go to his party because that's what I think he wanted. And both of us feel kind of weird and resentful and strange, and neither of us find out that we got played until we casually talk about the incident 10 years later. Up to another commenter. He's in his 70s, but he's still sharp enough to be working. I asked my other brother, nebulously, without mentioning the reason why, who works with my dad every day, if he'd noticed any decline, and he said Dad seems sharp as ever in their work environment. It's pretty mentally demanding work, so I think it would be evident there. I'll also note, though, my dad rejected an OCD diagnosis when he was in therapy after my parents' divorce. So he's not without any history of mental illness. Not sure if that would cause this behavior, though. Update 1 day later. I talked to my brother on the phone about the situation, and he expressed that he had absolutely no idea why our father would imply that Billy and Bobby would need to move in with me at any point. He seemed genuinely surprised and had no clue what the hell Dad was talking about. He claims to have absolutely never expressed anything like that to our dad. I believe him. I asked him if there was any possible reason at all that Dad would think that I'd need to take in my nephews. Is there some problem Dad thinks he is pre-solving without consulting either of us? Is there an illness or impending divorce or anything I don't know about? My brother assured me that there's nothing like that going on and that, as I assumed, I, of course, wouldn't even be near the top of the list of permanent caregivers even if something was going on. He knows I run 2 businesses out of my house and also just am not up for taking his kids in unless I'm the absolute last safe resort. Both of us are in agreement, as is our other oldest brother, that Dad generally doesn't seem to have any other signs that we've noticed of declining cognitive function, at all. But since this was such a strange outburst, we're still concerned that this is just the earliest sign. My brother, Billy and Bobby's dad, is going to talk to our dad about it ASAP and see what he says or what explanation he can give. Then we'll go from there. The issue that we're both aware of is that my dad, while a loving father and good man to many, is a bit of a liar and a lot of a manipulator. He has a lot of signs of OCD and gets fixated on things, then tries to manipulate to get his way with his fixation. He means well, but he has been known to be full of crap and have his own strange agendas that don't have much to do with anyone else's wants or needs. So unfortunately, my brother and I, and my brother has volunteered to go first Lowell, are going to have to confront him by essentially saying, "Dad, it's really important that you're honest about whether you are confused or intentionally lying, triangulating, manipulating, because that's the difference between us freaking out about your health versus us just understanding that sometimes you lie to push your agenda, but your brain is fine." Thank you to everyone who gave me feedback here. You've all been so sweet and supportive except that one guy who for some reason was dead convinced that I didn't pay for my own home and commented several times and DM'd me about it. I did pay for my home, and it's solely in my name. You weirdo. I'll keep y'all updated on what my brother and I figure out going forward. Second update 8 months later. I know this was forever ago, but life has been lifing pretty hard since then. The original post and first update, which I made at the top of the original, are in my post history. First of all, I just want to thank everyone for your concern and overall support. This sub is full of such lovely and helpful people. So many of you left tremendously helpful comments and sent me such kind messages as well. So I guess I'll start by saying that my dad doesn't have dementia or Alzheimer's or anything like that. If anything, he is perhaps experiencing a very slight cognitive decline due to age, but only insofar as his typical lifelong nonsense becoming a little more pronounced, and he's not really as slick as he thinks he is or as good at manipulating as he's used to being. Basically, he's used to being able to get away with a lot more manipulation of his kids than he's able to get away with now. I don't even think the onus for this particular episode of his is directly an age thing at all, though. I think it's a situational thing. After I talked to my dad multiple times, conferred with my brothers after they talked to my dad multiple times, and after we basically had to tell our father, "Hey, if you're not totally upfront about what's going on, we have to assume that you need to see a doctor, and we're not just going to drop this like we usually drop uncomfortable things in this family," I think I have figured out what was up. Ever since I moved out of my father's house, leaving an empty bedroom and office space in a house that already had a designated bedroom for the kids because they had a lot of sleepovers there, my sister-in-law has been obsessively pushing the idea that my nephews should start living summers and school breaks at my dad's house. I knew she'd brought this up a few times, but I didn't know how adamant she was being because this push entirely took place after I had moved. My dad doesn't live far from my brother and sister-in-law's place, 15 minutes away, so it's not like they'd be having some special summer experience in a new location. I think she just wants them out of her house for the summer, lol. My nephews love staying at Grandpa's because my dad has never been a real caregiver, not even when we were kids, so there are literally no rules, no bedtimes, no limit on sweets, no parental controls on the TV, no limit on screen time, no one checking if they brush their teeth or making them shower or do chores or change their clothes, zero supervision over them making messes or doing dumb crap, etc. So of course, when their mom asked them, "Do you want to spend the summer at Grandpa's? Do you want to go ask Grandpa if he'll let you stay the summer with him?" They went feral over the idea, and my dad was immediately put in the position of either agreeing or disappointing his 2 grandkids and saying no. My dad hates saying no to family outright, because he never wants family to say no to him at all. So he agreed, of course. My dad agreed to this last summer, but even with the help of a daily babysitter, who apparently quit halfway through, and I assume it's either because my dad made her uncomfortable, which is a whole different kettle of fish, or because those kids are super entitled, and even though the kids are getting more and more independent, it was torturous and exhausting for him. He never wanted to do that again. But, and my dad didn't say this is me applying what I know about him in general, my father is addicted to being the hero of the family. He needs us all to need him, and he needs us all to think he's great. Plus he has a massive ego about defying the idea of aging and being ultra-energetic and healthy, etc., and not an old man. He could not bring himself to admit that he doesn't have the energy for those kids, and he didn't want to say no because he doesn't want to normalize anyone saying no to anyone in this family. My father thrives on no one being allowed to have boundaries or say no, but it's now also become a prison he's built himself into. So, he was planning to pawn the kids off on me next summer. He was going to agree to take them and then bring them to my house and, in his words, ease into a smooth transition from his house to mine. From the sounds of it, and also just knowing my dad, I assume he was going to beg me to take the kids for a single day, drop them off with overnight bags and say, "Didn't you say they could sleep over?" Then make up a ton of excuses as to why they needed to stay at my house for longer and longer until he ran out the summer. Personally, I know this wouldn't have worked. I'd literally be dropping the kids off at their own damn house or calling the cops within 24 hours. But I don't think my dad understands just how badly his plan would have panned out because I used to be a massive doormat. I think he truly believes he could manipulate the situation, and me, into working out in his favor. He apparently asked my sister-in-law already if it was okay and she said yes, but she never even asked me about it or brought it up the whole time we were all wondering what my dad was on about. She only confirmed this after my dad finally admitted to his scheme. This is wild because she had just stood there and said nothing about it while my brothers and I were trying to figure out if our dad was insane. And to be honest, I think my sister-in-law knew the whole time that my dad was going to fully pawn her kids onto me and she didn't want to say anything and risk having to have her children, gasp, living in her own house all year. I truly don't know what she thought was about to happen, and when I asked her, "So, you didn't think you should even confirm this with me?" She swore that she remembered talking to me about it, which... No, girl. You did not. I would never agree to that. My brother is fairly livid with his wife. He generally hates how reliant she is on outside help to raise the kids when he's already such an involved dad, and they literally have multiple forms of paid childcare. And we are all becoming increasingly less patient with my father's triangulation BS. Like, I'm in my 30s, my older brothers are both pushing 50, and it's insane that he's still scheming and claiming it's all in the name of what's best for the family, because we all have our own families now, but he acts like we are bickering children who he is having to manage in order to keep the family together. Extra insane because my brothers and I were not children at the same time, when really he's just obsessively trying to maintain his preferred status quo in a reality where it makes less and less sense to maintain. This was also foolish and I'm truly annoyed. Like I said, I've had a lot going before and since his initial outburst. A lot of good things that needed my attention and some really hard things too. And instead of getting to be more fully present in what was going on in my own life, I had my focus split and pulled away by worrying that my father was potentially suffering from neurological issues and refusing to be seen for it. My brothers and I all just wasted so much time on this, all for this to be some stupid BS about his pride and him applying his own preferences to our lives again. Anyway, thank you again to everyone who gave me good insight and advice. I really appreciate y'all being here when I was spinning out about it. /relevant comments. Commenter. I was actually wondering about you earlier this week. God, just reading this was infuriating. I'm sorry you're dealing with it. Anyway, enjoy having your house to yourself. Ops response. Thank you. We are. My sister-in-law's apology involved offering to bring the kids over for a fun day at my house, and I told her actions have caused me to not want the kids over for the foreseeable future. She's fuming. Up to another commenter. When I was in my early 20s and my brother was in his mid-40s, our dad accidentally triangulated a wedge between us that took years to resolve, just because he wanted my brother to work more and he wanted me to pick my brother's kids up from school every day to accomplish that. He could have just come out and said to both of us, "I want you to get more work done, and I want you to pick his kids up so he doesn't have to break midday to do that," but instead he created this convoluted and complicated game of fake telephone that ended in my brother and me both absolutely hating the other and feeling massively insulted. We didn't realize this until years later. Up to another commenter. My brother is an extremely active father, actually, and they employ daily childcare. It's just that my sister-in-law is on a constant mission to get those kids away from her. She acts like spending one whopping whole week with her kids, still with their childcare, mind you, without being able to drop them off with someone else will literally kill her. I understand my brother's frustration because every time he turns around, his wife has made another plan to shuttle their kids off and away from them for as long as possible. If there's a snow forecast, she will purposefully rush them over to families' houses so they can get snowed in there. During COVID, she desperately tried to get them quarantined with her parents in another state, like when there was talk of a lockdown. She was rushing, driving all day and overnight to get them there and get back home so that they'd be stuck with her mom and dad during the lockdown. She flat out refuses to be alone with her children and is constantly angling to send them elsewhere, away from her. Commenter 2. Wow, your sister-in-law sucks. A couple weeks in the summer is one thing, but the whole summer with no structure, grandpa is just setting herself up for failure as a parent. Kids need structure and healthy food to have the best chances at growing up to their full potential. Ops response. Yeah, it's never been my place, obviously, but I have always been astonished by how much she pushes for her kids to stay with my dad because he has essentially systematically instilled his own disordered eating. My dad is a severely obese junk food addict and binger, onto my nephews. They were flagged as being extremely overweight at 9, despite being fairly active kids, and it's only gotten worse since. They sneak and hide food, they run up their lunch debt at school. It's not a financial issue for my brother or sister-in-law, but it's just that the kids are buying loads of snacks, and they binge until they get sick. I don't know what the hell she's thinking by prioritizing having her kids out of her house over having them home and trying to turn their relationship with food around. My brother and I both had struggles with serious restrictive eating disorders because of how warped of a relationship with food our dad gave us. My brother still, at almost 50, struggles with relapsing into bulimia. That has landed us both in the hospital multiple times. He and I were talking about it, and he was telling me that it actually makes him feel so worried and upset and awful when they leave the kids with my dad because he feels like he's letting them down. But my sister-in-law sets these things up behind his back and then throws fits and freaks out and vacillates between not speaking to him and non-stop arguing or threatening to just disappear into the night if he doesn't agree to send the kids to my dad's. I guess this last incident was kind of eye-opening, because it really was bizarre that she just stood there like a dead fish for months while my brothers and I were frantic that my dad had a brain tumor or something. Up to another commenter. Absolutely. I do have real sympathy for her. The moment they told me they were pregnant, I was immediately thinking, oh my God, she's not a fit mother. I know that sounds horrible, but she is truly the most fragile and anxious person I've ever met. She shuts down, and I mean shuts down, over the smallest things, stuff that wouldn't break most people's stride, to the point of paralysis. She always wanted one child, for it to be a girl, and for the girl to be a quiet and calm kid like she and my brother were, and like all my siblings and I were, to be honest, so it wasn't a bad bet. Instead, she got pregnant with twin boys who ended up having severe hyperactivity and focus problems. This was the worst-case scenario for her. I really wish they'd just done in vitro fertilization so she could have had her one girl. I don't think she'd be so frantic to pawn a daughter off all the time. Up to another commenter. I do have serious sympathy for my nephews. They've been spoiled to such a damaging degree, and now they're getting bullied and socially punished at school for being entitled, bratty crybabies. It sucked to literally watch my family. My sister-in-law is not the only one to blame here, either insist upon or passively endorse the consistent decision to make them into worse and worse little people. My dad is so astonished at how horrible their behavior is, and he keeps exclaiming about it coming out of nowhere when I feel like I've been watching a slow-motion train crash for years.